Good morning, friends. Today is the 8th of December 2025, and we will discuss 8 major global stories shaping the world right now. From social media restrictions and nuclear safety to global security shifts, economic power trends, political realignments, and a tragic disaster in Goa, today's briefing covers the most important developments you need to know. Here are today's top global headlines. Australia bans social media for under 16s, triggering global debate. Chernobyl's safety shield fails after drone strike, rising nuclear risk in war-torn Ukraine. US unveils bold new security strategy, Europe sidestepped, Western Hemisphere prioritized. EU slaps €120 million fine on X, first major enforcement under the Digital Services Act. Goa nightclub inferno kills 25, deadly blaze at opera club shocks the nation. Why India is a big draw for multinational companies. Tokyo protests after Chinese military aircraft locks radar on Japanese jets, tensions rise in East Asia. With Bolsonaro behind bars, Brazil's right-wing fractures as Trump warms to Lula. Let's begin with the first major story.
1. Australia bans social media for under 16s, triggering global debate. Australia becomes the first country to block social media for under 16s. Australia has taken a historic step by becoming the world's first nation to legally block social media access for children below the age of 16. This is not a recommendation or guideline. This is a fully enforceable law. By introducing this measure, Australia has shifted the global conversation about youth safety, digital rights, and the responsibility of tech companies. Experts say this marks the most aggressive attempt yet to control how young people interact with the digital world. The decision has immediately placed Australia at the centre of a worldwide debate on whether governments should regulate online behaviour at such a deep level. Ban officially takes effect from December 10, 2025. New rule comes into force on December 10, 2025, and after this date, any user below 16 will lose access to major social media platforms inside Australia. Tech companies must prove that their systems can detect and block underage users. The government has made it clear that there will be no extensions, no delays, and no exceptions. This deadline has pushed platforms into a race to upgrade their technology, review their databases, and prepare for large-scale account removals. For millions of young Australians, this will mark a sudden and dramatic shift in their digital lives. TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, YouTube, X, all platforms included. The ban covers almost every major social media platform used globally. TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, YouTube, X, Reddit, Twitch, and Threads all must follow the new age rule. There are no loopholes. There are no alternative platforms left open for teenagers to migrate to. This uniform coverage ensures that the ban cannot be avoided simply by switching between apps. For tech companies, it means a complete restructuring of how they operate in Australia. Underage accounts will be shut down immediately. Platforms are now required to delete or disable accounts belonging to users younger than 16. This includes accounts created recently, accounts created years ago, and even accounts where the user falsely entered their age. Companies must introduce new verification systems capable of identifying underage users. Thousands of accounts are expected to be shut down over the coming weeks. This is one of the largest digital cleanup operations in Australia's history, and it is likely to disrupt millions of daily interactions. Companies that fail to comply face fines up to $50 million to ensure strict enforcement. The Australian government has introduced massive financial penalties. Any platform that ignores the law or fails to implement effective age verification systems can be fined up to 50 million Australian dollars. This level of punishment has sent a strong message to global tech giants. For the first time, governments are placing heavy legal pressure on social media companies to protect young users, whether they like it or not. The fines are large enough to force full compliance from even the biggest platforms. Government says the ban protects children from online harm. The government argues that the ban is necessary to safeguard children from the rising dangers of the digital environment. Officials say social media exposes young users to cyberbullying, harmful content, peer pressure, unrealistic beauty standards, and addictive browsing habits. Recent studies have shown increases in depression, anxiety, loneliness, and sleep problems among teenagers linked to social media usage. The government believes removing children from these platforms until age 16 will give them time to develop emotionally and mentally without digital distortion. This is being described as one of the most significant child protection measures in the online era. Experts warn about privacy risks and age verification challenges. Despite the government's intentions, several experts have raised serious concerns. To enforce the law, platforms may be required to collect sensitive data, such as ID cards, facial scans, biometric information, or advanced age verification scans. Privacy advocates warn that this could expose families to identity theft, surveillance, and misuse of personal information. There are also fears that scammers may take advantage of the new verification systems. Critics argue that while the law aims to protect children, it might unintentionally compromise user privacy on a massive scale. High Court challenges already underway. The law is already facing legal challenges in Australia's High Court. Teenagers and digital rights groups argue that social media is a key platform for free speech, education, creativity, and communication. They believe the ban restricts constitutional rights, limits expression, and cuts young people off from important social and cultural spaces. The outcome of these legal battles will decide whether the law stands permanently or undergoes changes. This will be one of the most closely watched court decisions of the year. Platforms begin shutting down thousands of underage accounts. Several platforms have already begun implementing the new rules ahead of the official deadline. Thousands of underage accounts across Australia have been flagged and removed. Tech companies are upgrading their sign-up pages, adding age checks, and introducing automated systems to detect fake ages. For many teenagers, this may be their final week of access before they are permanently locked out. The transition is expected to be fast, disruptive, and widespread. The world is watching. Many countries may introduce similar laws. Australia's bold move has captured global attention. Governments across Europe, North America, and Asia are observing how the ban is implemented and whether it successfully protects young users. If the law proves effective, other countries may adopt similar restrictions. This could trigger a worldwide change in how teenagers use social media. However, if the ban causes major problems, the world may search for alternative solutions. Either way, Australia has opened a new chapter in the global debate about youth, technology, and online safety. Two. Chernobyl's safety shield fails after drone strike, rising nuclear risk in war-torn Ukraine. Drone strike damages Chernobyl's protective safety shield. The protective structure built over the destroyed reactor at Chernobyl, known as the new safe confinement, has suffered significant damage after a drone strike hit the facility earlier this year. This structure was designed to contain radioactive material for nearly a century, preventing any spread of contamination. The strike pierced sections of the shield's outer and inner layers, raising global alarm about nuclear safety in a conflict zone. The attack underscores how vulnerable even highly protected nuclear legacy sites can be during wartime. Outer and inner cladding of the shelter were breached. Inspections confirmed that both the external cladding and internal insulation panels of the giant steel dome were damaged. These layers protect the environment from radioactive dust sealed inside since the 1986 disaster. With the insulation compromised, experts warn that the shelter's long-term stability is now at risk. Although the primary frame remains intact, the breach means the structure can no longer guarantee full containment under all conditions. IAEA declares the shelter has lost its primary safety functions. The International Atomic Energy Agency completed an on-site review and concluded that the Chernobyl shelter no longer offers its original level of safety. Inspectors say the damage has weakened the dome's ability to confine radiation, one of its most critical functions. This assessment has triggered international concern, as the protective structure was expected to remain secure for decades. The agency's statement serves as a global warning about the fragility of nuclear sites in conflict areas. Radiation levels remain stable for now despite the structural damage. Radiation readings around the Chernobyl site remain within normal limits. Sensors placed inside and around the shelter continue to function and have not detected any dangerous spikes. While this is reassuring for the moment, experts caution that stable radiation levels today do not eliminate long-term risk. Further degradation or another attack could change the situation rapidly. Emergency repairs were made, but only temporary ones. After the drone strike, Ukrainian emergency teams and engineers quickly moved in to extinguish fires and patch visible damage. However, these repairs are temporary and only meant to prevent immediate deterioration. International experts say the structure now requires major restoration to regain its protective capability. Until full reconstruction begins, the shelter remains vulnerable to weather, corrosion, and additional attacks. The strike highlights nuclear vulnerability in war zones. This incident has once again shown how dangerous it is when war reaches nuclear facilities, even those no longer operational. Chernobyl, although shut down decades ago, still holds tons of radioactive waste that must remain sealed indefinitely. A single strike on the protective structure has revived fears about nuclear safety during active conflict. The world is now forced to confront a new reality. Nuclear risks are no longer limited to accidents but now include warfare. Environmental and public health concerns are rising. Experts warn that sustained damage to the shelter could increase the risk of radioactive particles escaping over time. Even a small release could affect air quality, soil stability, and ecosystems across Ukraine and neighboring countries. If further attacks occur or the structure weakens, long-term exposure risks may extend far beyond national borders. This situation has reignited global concerns about the true fragility of nuclear-contaminated zones. Ukraine blames Russia for targeting the Chernobyl zone. Ukrainian authorities have accused Russia of deliberately striking the area, calling it an attack aimed at destabilizing nuclear safety. They argue that targeting Chernobyl is a direct threat not just to Ukraine, but to the entire European region. Russia denies the allegations. The incident has deepened international tensions and added a nuclear safety dimension to the ongoing conflict. Global nuclear watchdogs call for urgent repairs. International nuclear safety bodies, including the IAEA, have urged immediate large-scale repairs to restore the shelter's protective capability. They warn that delays could allow the damage to worsen, making future reconstruction more difficult and expensive. Several countries have offered technical support, stressing that nuclear risk cannot be contained within borders. Restoring the shield is now seen as an international priority. Chernobyl becomes a global warning about nuclear danger in conflict zones. The world is watching the situation closely. The Chernobyl strike has become a symbol of the unpredictable nuclear risks created by modern warfare. It has sparked discussions about how to protect nuclear-related sites during armed conflict, whether active or decommissioned. Experts warn that unless nuclear safety protocols are redefined for war zones, humanity may face environmental disasters that could last generations. 3. US unveils bold new security strategy, Europe sidestepped, Western Hemisphere prioritized. The 2025 security strategy signals a major shift. US prioritizes the Western Hemisphere over Europe and global entanglements. The newly released 2025 National Security Strategy reorients America's strategic focus. Instead of viewing global issues through worldwide alliances and interventions, the strategy centers the Western Hemisphere as the primary zone of interest. This marks a deliberate departure from decades of US foreign policy orthodoxy. The shift implies reduced willingness to act as a global policeman and greater emphasis on hemispheric influence, migration control, economic statecraft, and regional security. By refocusing priorities so dramatically, the United States is signaling that it views today's global landscape differently, preparing to defend core national interests at home before engaging abroad. Europe is de-emphasized and criticized. US distances itself from traditional alliances. A new strategy takes a harsher tone toward Europe. It questions long-standing alliances and criticizes European partners more directly than past doctrines. This reflects skepticism toward multilateral institutions and collective defense systems that have defined US-Europe cooperation since World War II. Allies now face uncertainty. Traditional guarantees and support may no longer be a given. The US is signaling that cooperation will depend on alignment with new American priorities, not historical expectations. Focus on peace through strength, economic statecraft, and national interest. Pragmatic realism replaces interventionist idealism. The strategy frames foreign policy around what is practical and beneficial to American interests, described as strength, restraint, and focused national interest. It argues that broad global commitments and attempts to shape foreign societies are no longer justified. Instead, the US will rely on military deterrence, economic leverage, and carefully chosen partnerships to safeguard itself. Many analysts see this as a return to old-school realism, diplomacy based on balance of power, selective engagement, and pragmatism, not global nation-building. War in Ukraine remains a concern, but NATO and Europe are no longer automatic priorities. The strategy mentions the war in Ukraine, but only from the perspective of avoiding deep global entanglements. It avoids the previous hardline language of countering Russia as a central mission. This shift shakes the foundations of alliance expectations, raising questions about long-term US commitment. Experts warn this could destabilize the European security order and push nations to rethink their defense posture and alliances. Indo-Pacific and China remain on the radar, but with selective engagement, not confrontation. Unlike earlier doctrines that treated rivalry with China as the primary global challenge, the new strategy does not position it as the central focus. It frames US-China relations as economic competition, balancing deterrence with trade and technological rivalry. Allies like India and other Indo-Pacific nations are viewed as partners to counterbalance Beijing's influence. The message is clear: the US no longer aims to lead a global bloc against China, but instead seeks strategic deterrence while prioritizing economic interests. Shift toward national sovereignty and a state-centric world order. Democratization no longer a primary goal. Strategy moves away from the goal of spreading democracy or human rights as a central US mission. Instead, it focuses on sovereignty, nation-state authority, and non-interference. This reflects a broader pivot away from the post-Cold War liberal international order toward a more realist, interest-driven approach. Supporters say this avoids costly foreign interventions. Critics warn it may weaken global cooperation on issues like human rights, climate, and international stability. Foreign policy merges with economic power. Trade, technology, and supply chain security become strategic weapons. The NES treats economic strength, industrial policy, and technological leadership as pillars of national security. It emphasizes supply chain resilience, domestic manufacturing capacity, and control over critical technologies. This suggests the US will use trade rules, investment restrictions, and industrial strategy to project global influence. In this vision, national security is redefined, economic resilience becomes as important as military power. Allies expected to carry more burden, less reliance on US military commitments. The strategy urges allies to contribute more to defense, financially, militarily, and technologically, instead of depending on American security guarantees. This could make alliances more transactional, shared burdens, clearer conditions, and mutual benefit rather than ideological alignment. For partner countries, this may require higher defense spending and significant shifts in foreign policy planning. Risks ahead: uncertainty, weakened alliances, and potential power vacuums. By stepping back from multilateral commitments, the US risks creating power vacuums in regions that depend on American leadership. Rivals may take advantage of reduced US engagement. Regional conflicts may escalate, and global coordination on climate, pandemics, and arms control could weaken. Allied trust may erode, pushing countries to seek new alignments or increase self-reliance. A new global posture for America. For better or worse, the 2025 National Security Strategy represents a fundamental shift in US identity in world affairs. It casts the US not as the world's policeman, but as a powerful nation focused on securing its own interests first. Supporters call it a pragmatic correction to decades of costly global commitments. Critics call it a retreat from responsibility that could destabilize global order. Regardless of perspective, one thing is clear: the world must now adapt to a very different American approach to foreign policy. (4) EU slaps €120 million. Fine on X. First big test of landmark Digital Services Act. First major enforcement under the Digital Services Act. X fined €120 million for transparency breaches. The European Commission has imposed a €120 million fine on X, the first major penalty since the Digital Services Act came into force. This move signals that the EU is fully prepared to enforce digital platform rules, even against the biggest global tech companies. Under the DSA, platforms must ensure transparent ad systems, user verification clarity, clear content moderation processes, and proper data access for oversight. The fine establishes a strong precedent for how strictly the EU plans to regulate digital platforms going forward. What exactly did X do wrong? 3 major violations highlighted. X's blue check verification system was deemed deceptive. The platform allows users to buy the blue checkmark without requiring identity verification, misleading people into believing verified accounts are legitimate or trustworthy. EU regulators called this a manipulative design practice. X also failed to provide a functional, transparent advertising repository. Platforms are required to publish detailed information about each ad, including who paid for it, targeting criteria, reach, and purpose. X's system did not meet these standards, leaving researchers and regulators unable to track potential misinformation or political influence campaigns. The platform additionally hindered researcher access to public data. The DSA requires large platforms to allow independent researchers access to certain public datasets to study systemic risks like disinformation. X reportedly blocked or delayed this access, which contributed to the violation. The total fine is understood to reflect separate penalties for each violation category. EU frames this as user protection, not censorship. According to officials, the fine targets transparency failures and manipulative design choices, not user speech or political content. Regulators argue that paid checkmarks without identity verification, combined with opaque ad systems, create major risks, including impersonation, fraud, and disinformation. The EU insists the enforcement is meant to safeguard users and ensure fairness in the digital ecosystem. X and Elon Musk react strongly. Tension rises over free speech and sovereignty. Elon Musk sharply criticized the penalty, calling it crazy and attacking the EU's regulatory framework. The issue quickly escalated into a broader political debate. Certain US commentators have framed the fine as an attack on American tech companies and a threat to free speech principles. The clash now embodies a deeper ideological divide: Europe's regulatory model versus a more libertarian, free market approach favored by some in the US. Impact on X users, advertisers, and the broader social media landscape. Users in the EU may soon see major changes to verification systems. Blue checkmarks could be redesigned, removed, or tied to stricter identity verification, potentially improving authenticity and reducing impersonation risks. Advertisers and political campaigners will face stricter transparency rules. Targeting criteria, ad reach, and funding details will have to be fully disclosed, reducing opportunities for covert political influence. For the global tech industry, this enforcement is a warning. Any platform operating in Europe must align with the DSA or face major penalties. Other companies are now expected to review their systems to avoid similar violations. Broader implications: global tech governance and shifting power dynamics. The €120 million fine marks a turning point in the global regulation of digital platforms. The EU has shown it has both the legal authority and the political will to enforce tough rules on foreign tech companies. This may push other countries to adopt similar regulatory models, increasing pressure on platforms to comply with diverse global standards. For X, this ruling could necessitate significant operational changes not just in Europe, but worldwide, especially if the company chooses to standardize systems globally. Why this story matters: the big picture. The penalty against X is more than just a financial punishment. It represents a redefinition of how social media platforms will be held accountable in the years ahead. It challenges companies to balance monetization models, like paid verification, with user safety and transparency standards. It highlights a broader global struggle between competing visions of digital governance, one that emphasizes regulation, accountability, and democratic oversight, and another that prioritizes free expression, minimal interference, and corporate autonomy. Ultimately, the case raises a profound question for the digital age. Who should shape the rules of the internet? Tech CEOs, national governments, or democratic institutions?
One. Goa nightclub inferno kills 25, deadly blaze at opera club shocks nation. Fire at popular nightclub in Goa kills 25 people. A massive fire erupted at the nightclub Birch by Romeo Lane in Apara, North Goa late on Saturday night, resulting in the deaths of at least 25 people. The victims include both staff and tourists, a grim reminder of how quickly a night of fun can end in tragedy. Emergency responders worked through the night, but by the time the blaze was under control, many lives had already been lost. Victims, mainly staff members, some tourists. Horror for many families. Authorities say out of the 25 deceased, a majority were staff working at the nightclub, while several were tourists visiting Goa. The deceased came from different parts of India, and tragically, among the victims were members of a single family from Delhi. This makes the disaster even more heartbreaking, since many families are now grieving multiple loved ones lost in a single night. Blaze likely triggered by fireworks or firecrackers, plus structural and safety lapses. Initial investigations suggest that the fire was triggered by indoor firecrackers or pyrotechnics used during a performance at the club. Sparks reportedly hit the wooden ceiling or other flammable material, causing rapid fire spread. Further reports indicate the club may have lacked proper fire safety compliance, narrow exits, absence of emergency exits, and poor ventilation in basement areas, conditions that turned the place into a death trap when smoke and fire spread fast. It appears the club was functioning without adequate fire safety, no objection certificate, and proper licensing. Many victims died of suffocation as smoke engulfed the basement, tragic escape failure according to police and eyewitness accounts. A large number of victims were trapped in the basement of the club when the fire erupted. The basement lacked adequate ventilation or escape routes, and smoke filled the enclosed space quickly. While some guests near exits managed to flee, those in the basement or near closed-off areas had little chance of survival. This tragic outcome underscores how dangerous poor structural safety and lack of emergency protocols can be in crowded entertainment venues. 4 people detained, owners and staff held accountable, investigative probe ordered in the immediate aftermath. Police detained 4 staff members, including senior managers of the club. Additionally, authorities have booked the club owners, and local officials have been suspended for alleged negligence regarding licensing and safety clearances. A magisterial inquiry has been ordered, and the government has promised strict action against those found responsible. Investigation reveals major safety violations. Club lacked fire clearance and valid permits. Preliminary findings show that the nightclub was operating without proper fire safety clearance, lacked adequate emergency exits and ventilation, and may have violated construction norms. Authorities have described the oversight as severe negligence and said the disaster was preventable, a result of disregard for basic safety regulations in a heavily crowded venue. This has sparked widespread anger, not just at club owners, but at regulatory failure and systemic lapses that allowed such a venue to function unsafely. Government response: compensation announced, all clubs to undergo safety audits in response to the tragedy. The state government announced ex gratia compensation for the victims' families and support to the injured. A full safety audit of all nightclubs and entertainment venues in Goa has been ordered, to ensure no similar disaster occurs again. Political leaders have expressed grief and condemnation, calling the fire a painful day for Goa's tourism industry and warning of harsh legal consequences for those responsible. Impact on Goa's reputation and tourist industry: shock waves across the state. Goa, long celebrated as a top tourist destination known for beaches and nightlife, has suffered a severe blow to its image. A tragedy of this scale raises serious questions about safety standards in its clubs and accommodations. Tourists and locals alike are now questioning whether nightlife venues across the state adhere to regulations, and whether authorities have failed to ensure public safety. This could impact tourist inflow, investor confidence, and trust in the local regulatory system in the near future. Public outrage and demand for accountability: clubs and regulators under fire. News of the fire and its aftermath has triggered sharp public outrage. Families of victims, former patrons, and civil society groups are demanding full accountability, not just from the club owners, but also from local authorities who allowed the club to operate without proper permits. This incident has reignited debates about fire safety norms, licensing, government oversight, and the culture of negligence that sometimes surrounds nightlife businesses. Many are calling for tougher regulations, regular inspections, and transparent compliance mechanisms for all entertainment venues, not only in Goa, but across India. This tragedy should serve as a wake-up call. Safety standards must be non-negotiable. The Opera nightclub blaze is not just a tragic accident. It reveals systemic failures, from disregard for fire safety norms and irresponsible use of fireworks, to neglect of permit procedures, poor design, and weak crowd management. If lessons are ignored, similar disasters could happen again, perhaps somewhere else, and perhaps even worse. It is imperative for governments, regulators, business owners, and the public to demand strong accountability, enforce safety laws strictly, and ensure that every life is valued over profit or nightlife glamour. 2. Why India is a big draw for MNCs. what attracts multinationals and foreign investors to India? Huge and growing market and consumer base. India has a very large population, including a rapidly expanding middle class, which means huge demand for goods and services, from consumer goods to technology, retail, entertainment, and healthcare. Rising incomes, urbanization, and changing consumption patterns make India a lucrative destination for companies wanting to sell at scale, from everyday products to premium and aspirational brands. Competitive cost structure and large skilled workforce. Operating costs, especially labor costs, in India remain relatively low compared to many developed or East Asian economies, which improves profitability for MNCs setting up manufacturing or services here. India has a large working-age population, with many young, educated, English-speaking professionals, making it ideal for manufacturing, services, and knowledge-based operations. With many sectors open for foreign direct investment under liberalized terms, MNCs often find it easier to establish subsidiaries, plants, offices, and even fully owned entities in numerous industries. Improving business environment, supportive policies and the China Plus One effect. Recent regulatory and policy reforms, including efforts to improve ease of doing business, infrastructure build-out, and investment incentives, have made India a more attractive place for MNCs to expand. Global trends like supply chain diversification, geopolitical shifts, and rising costs in other countries push companies to seek alternative manufacturing and service hubs, and India frequently emerges as a top candidate. India's blend of manufacturing potential, strong IT and services sector, and growing domestic demand means MNCs can run export-oriented manufacturing, domestic market production, services, and R&D from the same country, making India a flexible and strategic base. Access to global capital, technology transfer, expertise, and growth potential. Foreign direct investment brings in capital that helps expand industries, infrastructure, and exports, and creates jobs. MNCs often bring advanced technology, global best practices, organizational know-how, and management expertise. This raises productivity, improves quality standards, deepens R&D capability, and helps build a more globalized industrial and services ecosystem in India. Because of the combination of capital, market size, workforce, and policy stability, many global companies now see India not just as a production hub, but as a long-term strategic center for manufacturing, R&D, exports, services, and global supply chains. What lucrative playground means, for both MNCs and India. When analysts call India a lucrative playground for MNCs, they usually refer to high potential returns, big market plus lower costs plus strong growth equals attractive profit potential. Multiple business avenues, MNCs can export, serve the domestic market, set up regional headquarters, do R&D, and participate across many sectors. Long-term growth, demographic dividend, rising consumer demand, and evolving economic structure keep upside open for decades. Strategic diversification, companies looking to reduce dependence on a single country often treat India as a key alternative. For India, this inflow can mean more jobs, technology transfer, infrastructure development, export growth, and overall economic expansion. But it's not all upside, challenges and trade-offs. Lucrative does not mean effortless. There are challenges and trade-offs, local competition and regulatory complexity. While many sectors are open, some still have restrictions, regulatory compliance, labor laws, local partnerships, and bureaucracy can be demanding. Uneven benefits, urban and skilled populations may benefit more, while rural or unskilled segments may lag behind unless inclusive policies are implemented. Impact on small and local businesses, large MNCs in retail, manufacturing, or services can outcompete small domestic players, affecting the livelihoods of small traders and artisans. Managing global expectations versus local realities, cultural differences, infrastructure gaps, logistics, and labor issues can complicate operations and require long-term adaptation and investment. What it means for the future. From India's and M.N.C.'s perspective, India is likely to remain a major global investment hotspot, especially in manufacturing, technology, consumer goods, retail, services, and export-oriented industries. As more MNCs invest, the Indian economy could see a structural shift, greater industrialization, better infrastructure, stronger export capacity, more employment, and a rise in global standard manufacturing and services hubs. For workers and society, there is potential for improved job opportunities, better wages, and skill development, provided reforms and labor policies support fair and inclusive growth. For global supply chains, India may continue to emerge as a serious alternative to traditional manufacturing centers, especially in an era of geopolitical uncertainty and supply chain rebalancing. 3. Tokyo protests after Chinese military aircraft locks radar on Japanese jets, tensions surge in East Asia. What happened? Chinese jets locked fire control radar on Japanese aircraft near Okinawa, according to Japanese defense authorities. A Chinese J-15 fighter jet launched from the aircraft carrier Liaoning intermittently directed fire control radar at Japanese F-15 jets near the waters off Okinawa and the Miyako Strait. Japan's defense minister described the action as dangerous and extremely regrettable, and lodged a formal diplomatic protest with Beijing. No weapons were fired and no airspace violation was reported, but radar lock is widely considered a hostile act, a strong signal of potential attack or aggression. Tokyo's response: strong protest, call for calm yet firm vigilance. Tokyo reacted quickly, summoning the Chinese ambassador and demanding strict preventive measures. Japan vowed a calm but resolute response, signaling that its forces will closely monitor future activity and respond if similar incidents occur again. In a rare display of coordination, Australia publicly supported Japan, with its defense minister urging calm and de-escalation while sharing concern over the incident. Why radar locking matters. It's not a routine air encounter. Locking a fire control radar on another warplane is one of the most provocative military acts, short of actually firing a weapon. It signals potential targeting or intent to engage, forcing the targeted aircraft to take defensive measures and raising the risk of miscalculation. Analysts describe this episode as one of the most serious military confrontations between Japan and China in recent years, more severe than typical close passes or near-miss encounters. The broader context: already strained Japan-China ties over Taiwan and regional security. The radar lock incident comes amid already heightened tensions between Japan and China. Recently, Japanese leaders signaled that Japan might support Taiwan in the event of a Chinese attack, a position that Beijing strongly condemned. Chinese naval activity in East Asian waters has also increased, with more frequent deployments near the Miyako Strait, intensified carrier-based air operations, and warship movements, all contributing to a tense security environment. Many analysts view the radar locking not as an isolated incident, but as part of a wider pattern of pressure and power projection by China in the region. Diplomatic fallout, crisis for bilateral ties and regional security alarm. Japan's formal protest may further strain its already fragile diplomatic relationship with China. Historical disputes, including territorial disagreements over the Senkaku Islands, add to the mistrust. Allied nations and regional partners are watching closely. Incidents like this can undermine regional stability, fuel arms buildups, and complicate diplomatic or de-escalation efforts. Australia's decision to publicly support Japan underscores the broader regional implications, extending the incident's significance beyond just bilateral ties. Risk of miscalculation. Why such incidents are especially dangerous. Military aircraft operate at high speed and in close proximity. Radar lock intensifies tension and compresses decision-making time. Any misjudgment, misreading of intent, or sudden maneuver can escalate quickly into a collision, exchange of fire, or wider confrontation. Such incidents also erode trust over time, making future encounters more dangerous and reducing the effectiveness of existing crisis management understandings. International law and norms, disputed skies, disputed rules. There is no single global law that explicitly bans radar locking over international waters, but international air safety norms and regional confidence-building agreements discourage threatening behavior. Many countries interpret radar locking as hostile or provocative. If it becomes frequent, it can weaken unwritten rules of restraint and lead to more aggressive postures. Japan has labeled the act a dangerous violation of safe flight conduct, while China claims its forces were carrying out training and that Japanese jets interfered with their operations. What's next? Escalation, diplomatic pressure, or cautious stability? Japan has indicated it will maintain calm but firm vigilance. It is likely to increase air and naval patrols and enhance surveillance around disputed and strategically important waters. Diplomatic pressure will continue through protests, public statements, and coordination with allies like the United States and Australia. There is also a risk of tit-for-tat behavior, more military drills, more close intercepts, and more aggressive signaling, all of which can raise the risk of a serious incident. Why this incident matters globally: Indo-Pacific stability at stake. The radar lock event is not just a Japan-China issue. It affects the broader Indo-Pacific, where regional states watch closely for signs of escalation between major powers. Any serious conflict in these waters could disrupt vital shipping lanes, impact energy supplies and trade routes, and trigger economic and security crises far beyond the region. The incident highlights how fragile regional peace is, and how quickly routine military operations near disputed spaces can spiral into a wider confrontation. Key questions raised for governments and alliances: should clearer international rules or agreements be developed to limit aggressive radar lock and close military encounters? How will Japan balance deterrence and diplomacy in its next steps? Will China moderate its behavior under international pressure, or continue assertive military operations? Can regional actors, including ASEAN countries, Australia, and the United States, help build mechanisms to prevent escalation and manage crises in the Indo-Pacific? 4. With Bolsonaro behind bars, Brazil's right-wing fragments. As Trump turns toward Lula, political landscape shifts. Bolsonaro jailed, former president convicted and imprisoned for 27 years after a lengthy legal process. Brazil's highest court convicted former president Jair Bolsonaro of involvement in a coup attempt following his defeat in the 2022 election. He is now serving a 27-year prison sentence, an unprecedented ruling in Brazil's modern history. Many of his supporters had assumed he would evade accountability. The conviction has shaken the core of Brazil's far-right political movement. The incarceration of such a polarizing figure undermines his direct influence, forcing allies and supporters to reconsider their strategies. It has created a vacuum in right-wing leadership, and destabilized their political momentum. The right-wing coalition is fractured. Uncertainty over future leadership with Bolsonaro behind bars. Brazil's right-wing camp is struggling to regroup. His image and personal brand, which had long served as a unifying force, can no longer be deployed in the same way. Some potential successors, including members of his family, face credibility problems and lack broad appeal beyond Bolsonaro's most loyal base. Analysts note that this fragmentation weakens the cohesion and discipline of right-wing parties, making it harder to mount a strong, united challenge in future elections. the disarray inside Brazil's right-wing bloc may reduce its electoral strength, giving an advantage to more stable and unified political forces. Meanwhile, Lula gains new strength, legitimacy, stability, and shifting alliances as Bolsonaro's downfall continues. President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva stands as the central, stabilizing figure on the center-left. Many Brazilians and international observers view Lula's government as restoring democratic order and respect for institutions after a turbulent period. This boosts his legitimacy and political capital. With the right fragmented and distracted by internal crisis, Lula and his allies have more room to consolidate support, govern with fewer immediate threats from a unified far-right front, and plan strategically for upcoming elections. Lula's growing advantage makes the possibility of long-term political dominance more realistic, particularly if the right fails to reorganize effectively. Unexpected realignment, Trump warms up to Lula, global implications and shifting geopolitics in a surprising turn. Reports suggest that Donald Trump and Lula have engaged in discussions on trade, crime, and economic cooperation. This development is symbolically significant. A former US president who was once broadly aligned with Bolsonaro's worldview is now engaging pragmatically with Lula. It signals a shift away from purely ideological fault lines toward more flexible, interest-based diplomacy. For Brazil, this could mean renewed relevance in international negotiations, potential investment opportunities, and greater diplomatic leverage. For global politics, it demonstrates how quickly alignments can shift when domestic political landscapes change. The warming relationship could isolate Brazil's hard-right factions further, reducing external backing and weakening international support networks they once relied on. Consequences for the 2026 elections: weakened right, stronger left with no clear successor to Bolsonaro, and the right wing riven by internal rivalries. The conservative camp's prospects for the 2026 elections appear uncertain. Potential candidates may struggle to appeal both to Bolsonaro's loyal base and to more moderate voters wary of extremism and institutional instability. Lula's camp, meanwhile, can campaign on stability, democratic restoration, and pragmatic international partnerships, messages that may resonate with voters tired of chaos and conflict. If these trends continue, Brazil's center-left forces may retain dominance and shape the country's policy trajectory for several years. Risks and unpredictability, not a guaranteed smooth path. Despite Bolsonaro's imprisonment, right-wing sentiment remains strong in parts of Brazilian society. Resentment, polarization, and radical fringe groups could still mobilize protests or alternative political vehicles. Over-reliance on Lula could also create vulnerabilities: complacency, governance failures, corruption, or economic shocks could erode support quickly. External factors, like global economic turbulence, commodity shocks, or regional instability, could further disrupt domestic politics. Even with the right weakened, Brazil's democracy remains dynamic and unpredictable. Political tides can shift rapidly. Why this matters: bigger picture for Brazil and the world. Bolsonaro's conviction and imprisonment mark a milestone for the rule of law in Latin America, sending a message that attempts to undermine democracy can carry serious consequences. The emerging alignment between Lula and key international actors reflects a more pragmatic era in foreign policy, where ideological lines are less rigid and national interest plays a larger role. For other democracies, Brazil's experience underscores the importance of strong institutions, independent judiciaries, and civic engagement in safeguarding democratic norms against authoritarian tendencies. At the same time, the fragmentation of Brazil's right may foreshadow broader shifts in global right-wing movements, as some populist leaders face legal consequences and their networks lose momentum, creating space for more moderate or redefined conservative politics. Thank you so much for watching video.